A very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you did have a fantastic weekend. I do welcome you to the breakfast meeting, a segment on the Morning Breeze. My name is Doreen Komhanch, and this morning we'll be talking about sexual reproductive health rights in Uganda, and of course looking at why exactly these rights have been misinterpreted, misrepresented, and of course where exactly we could be getting it wrong. Of course, we'll be looking at a few statistics and looking at how far the country has come and what has been done by various players, including government itself. And of course, we'll be talking about Reproductive Uganda that has really upped this game in this particular field, and of course several other players that have come in to see that young people, and by young people I'm talking about the age between 10 and 24 years, indeed get to enjoy their rights and also know what their rights are and are living as per the right ways possible. So in this case we are talking about why special attention should be devoted to the sexual and reproductive health of adolescents and young people in Uganda, and we are talking about a country whose population we're talking about a country where a third of its population is actually the particular age group we'll be discussing this morning. And of course we'll be talking about things like early births, that continue to occur to mothers below the ages of 20 years, which can be referred to as a bit too early, and of course compared to the 12% among those aged 35 years, where of course health experts will also come in and say that that's a bit too late. So we'll look at the 20 years and below, and in this case we will be talking about early pregnancies, we'll be talking about lots of infections, HIV, STIs, amongst others. Now joining me in studio this morning is Mr. James Tumusime, the Youth and Gender Coordinator at Reproductive Health Uganda, which was a partner of Reproductive Uganda that just concluded intergenerational dialogue. Now the intergenerational dialogue was particularly looking at various players coming in the field, coming together and discussing the very issues that I just talked about, and of course benchmarking on the what was, what is, and what will be. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm fine.
Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so let's talk about the rights in sexual reproductive health that have always been a subject to misinterpretation. As a player in this particular field, what does the rights aspect mean?
Thank you, Doreen. I'm glad to be at NBS once again, and of course we are very happy to be part of NBS because in my own view NBS is one of those TVs that has remained interested in local content, but especially issues that relate with young people in Uganda towards looking for a solution. And I mean, not praising you, but I'm glad that you're really part of this.
Thank you.
Now, the discussion around sexual reproductive health and rights in Uganda is a very deep discussion that has many people looking at it from different perspectives. Really depends on the lens you put on. But for us, in the nature of work that we do, when we talk about sexual reproductive health and rights, we are really trying to look at addressing the unique needs of young people that, for example, are already sexually active, that may not have access to information, may not have access to services. We are looking at young people who are being forced to marry before they actually complete school or before they even turn the age of consent, which is 18 years. We are looking at what are the questions that young people are asking that are not being answered, and sometimes it is not as deep as it should be because the discussion is many times sabotaged. The discussion is not allowed to continue when young people ask key questions of, when am I supposed to begin to have sex? Someone will say you're supposed to begin to have sex according to the Constitution at the age of 18. But then this young person who is getting that answer has actually got their cows already received, checked in to be ready for marriage. So you find that there's a lot of disconnect between the policy that the Constitution that we speak about, the policies that are in place, and the practice, the lived realities of the people of Uganda, especially the young people. With a very big population of young people in Uganda, in young people, every time you walk, you're meeting someone who is 1 in 3. Approximately 33% of people in Uganda are below 15 years. Now, these are very young people, but asking questions which no one is answering, everyone is talking about the don't. You've talked about this issue of the millennials. Young people these days are much more different from the times when other people grew up, where the question of why is more eminent than any other questions. You know, you said I don't do this, why?
Yeah.
So the discussion around sexual reproductive health rights, to me, should be looked at as a discussion that should move this country forward, that should address the center stage issues that deter young people from progressing and making it in life. The issues that deter a young girl who has joined school in P1 at UPE level and is not able to reach P7 because someone did not tell her about menstruation, because someone did not tell her that someone will come and ask them for sex, and this is what they're supposed to respond. You know, this person really goes, the person begins a journey, they begin to climb the ladder, and they fall off the ladder without even realizing that they were climbing up a very steep ladder. You know, this year, the Monitor published a story that 1.7 million young people joined P1 in 2005. 1.7 million. 100,000 of these made it for A-level examinations.
Of the 1.7? Of
the 1.7 million. You've lost 1.6 million people who have joined school. Government has put investment because of many different issues. But key of them, 30% of this, are purely because someone made them pregnant, they did not have knowledge on menstruation and were ashamed of going back to school, or because they made someone pregnant and had to leave the school themselves. You know, when a young boy makes someone pregnant, it's not that theirs is a clean slate. They have turned away. So these issues, after investing in 1.7, you know, we are saying UP is very good, US is very good, but people are entering and they really never get to the top of the ladder. So these are the issues that for us as advocates and actors in reproductive health want to relate with. It's not some alien discussion, it's a discussion that lives with us, that we should address, that matters to everything else that we are doing.
So we normally refer to this particular discussion, and I'm talking about, you know, sexual reproductive, you know, health rights issues. Normally this is something that should be taken up by not just the players like GEMS and, you know, Richard Hunt government or anyone, or the school itself, but even parents.
Absolutely.
You know, elders in the community. You know, it's a cycle. You know, everyone has a role to play in this particular field. But at what point can one feel that it's actually okay to have this talk? We normally refer to as the talk.
The talk.
When, yes, at what point do I tell myself that, hey, my child has actually clocked 10, he's moving on, he's 18, he's 16. You know, is it about time I actually sat him down and had this talk?
Thank you, Doreen.
Yeah.
The beauty about this is that the problem is not unique to a few actors defining it. The problem is universal. Everyone knows the problem. Now, the challenge that we've had is that we have different solutions being offered. And the other bad bit of it is that when you offer your challenge, someone thinks your challenge is being influenced by another person. They are not allowing you to say that I have analyzed the evidence and this is what the challenge is and this is the possible solution. The discussion of when you should begin to speak about sexual reproductive health issues with young people is as open as it can be. You know, recently we are glad that the Ministry of Education is taking it upon themselves and they have now finished to draft the National Sexuality Education Framework. And in this framework they are talking at a starting point of 3 years. Now 3 years, one of the dailies carried that government teaches sex to 3-year-olds. The answer is that that's not correct. The issue is we are looking at beginning with age-sensitive discussions to the lived realities of those young people that you're talking about. You know, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old in Kampala, for example, who has access to NTV, to NBS, to Bukedde, etc., sees much more things than a 3-year-old somewhere in rural Uganda. So their questions regarding reproductive health will be very different.
Oh, so the environment should determine?
Partly.
Oh, okay.
You know, we could define that we shall talk about ABCD at this age. But the young person that we are prescribing this for begins to ask questions at a much earlier age. So the duty of the parent, the duty of whoever duty bearer is to contextualize, shape age-appropriate information that fits the circumstances. You know, I have had questions from parents who are asking, our 3-4-year-olds are asking why they cannot kiss. You know, one of my colleagues just over the weekend said their 4-year-old asked, why is kissing for adults only and not for them? Now, you have to contextualize discussions address this particular question at that time. Not to say that it is not age appropriate. The question is not age appropriate perhaps, but this person has seen someone kissing, they also want to kiss, and you're saying they can't kiss. Answer the why. Kissing is for adults because of ABCD. When we are talking about young people who are in, I mean, when I say now that, just to give you information, Doreen, from this dialogue that we had on Saturday, the DHO in Mutaleja told us that in his district, there is a grandmother of 26 years. That means she gave birth perhaps between 12 and 13, and her daughter has given birth between 12 and 13. Now, we have critical discussions at the country level of when can we talk about contraception, when can we talk about issues of fertility management to young people. I have personally come in experience of young people who are 21, 23, 24, who have 4, 5, 6 children. Now, when was the discussion on contraception? When was it supposed to have begun to these people? Is the discussion on contraception the right thing? Is the discussion on delaying sex the right thing? You know, we should define our context and define answers that fit in. When a young person who is 13 has given birth, they come to you and you're discussing with them. What are the options that are...
So are you saying, James, that the information given to these young people today has not been packaged in a manner that suits the current times?
Absolutely.
Because I would actually relate that to what I was going to ask you when you gave us that very quick example of a 26-year-old, grandma. Now we have people like you, we have different, organizations that have come up, and this, it's become a gospel, it's become a song. We have someone somewhere trying to talk to young people, but there is a clear, noticeable gap. Absolutely. Between this information given to young people and what is actually happening on ground as we do speak. We continue to see high rates of teenage pregnancies. We continue to see unsafe abortions. We continue to see these infections.
See, Doreen, there's a lot of disconnect in this country.
Yeah.
Someone will tell you that the age of consent in Uganda is 18 years of age. They will tell you that an adult who has sexual intercourse with a person below 18 commits an offense. And the person who has sexual intercourse with a 14-year-old below has committed, how do they call it, extreme case of defilement, where they even qualify for very tough sentences. But these same people, these same laws of ours, will be so quick to recognize marriage of adults and young people, child marriages. We've fought child marriages in Uganda, but they are recognized day in, day out. Like they say, everyone is happy apart from the advocate.
But by recognizing, what do you mean? Because I don't see, anyone recognizing an 18-year-old. Most of these marriages do exist, James, but they are illegal.
You see, okay, I withdraw if you're looking at it in the legal perspective.
Yeah, from the legal perspective.
But if you go and you find that so many people in the community have done it, gotten away with it,
seems to agree.
Everyone does nothing about it. The offenders are not brought to book. It becomes a cycle.
Do they have a choice?
Why don't they have a choice? If they were to have a choice, what choice would they have? Sometimes I get the feeling that it is perhaps easier to give the right information to young people, to tell them about the key things that are coming ahead of them before they actually happen, than them finding themselves in the ditch and they cannot get out of. Because, for example, we can sit here and discuss this. It's been discussed all over the place, But it is until we are sieving between the messages, the information, that, the president many years ago had this whole campaign on HIV, which was told by everyone in this country. Everyone spoke the same message. Everyone agreed to the multi-sector approach. And our HIV cases came down. We need to transform this to all other sectors. We don't want to be RHU Richer Hand speaking about providing age-sensitive sexuality education to young people, and other people somewhere are saying, come on, no, we can make these young people abstain. Other people are saying, no, you guys, whatever you're doing is sponsored by someone who doesn't have good of this country. Culturally, before 1800 etc., we had people getting married at the wrong age. People suffered consequences. But our culture was so quick. It was rough, but yes, it was to put out a message. In Kabale, for example, I don't come from Kabale, but I've read the story from NBS, where there was this cliff where young girls who...
I've actually been there. Yeah,
who dishonored the family. It's on
Lake Bunyonyi.
Were thrown. It was very barbaric.
Yeah.
But what was the message?
To deter.
To deter.
Yeah.
So you've come into an era where we have moved by every bound and inch, and we recognize that as barbaric. But we are not moving by every inch and bound to recognize that now that we are in the rights-based era, we are in the .com era, young people have information, they should have the full length of information that protects them first from accepting this person who is luring them into this early sex.
The laws are there, excuse me, the laws do exist, James, in this case. Are you simply advocating for strengthening them, for example, or do we simply have to implement what we already have on paper?
That is one bit. Let us implement what we have on paper, have the laws to work, but also let us recognize the realities that live in our times. That a 26-year-old who is a grandmother has killed, not has killed, but really has disadvantaged 2 generations, one for herself and one for her child, and actually the one for the grandchildren that are coming. There is a lot. So for us to look at the key issues that we want to transform our country with, we have to rewind a bit. Why did this 13-year-old girl give birth? Who made her pregnant? What were her circumstances? Why wasn't she in school amidst UPE? etc. Once you're able to answer these questions, give practical solutions. Give solutions that when the young person asks why, you have an answer. Not to say because it is supposed to be like that. When the young person says, but no, come on, you're saying I should not have sexual intercourse at this age. But it is my uncle, etc., who has done it, and what do I do? The family has said we can't report the uncle to police. What do you tell to this young person? Are you saying that we shall at that point say, oh, sorry, it's unfortunate, it is your uncle, the story ends here? So we need to give practical information. There's a lot of things that can go out to save. When we look at countries that are progressive, not that they have not had cultures which they have had to veto. They have had many things they have had to deal with. The president loves to compare Malaysia, Singapore, and Uganda, and Population Council has drawn these nice charts comparing our population in 1960, Malaysia and Uganda, versus 2011-2012 with Malaysia and Uganda. The people in Uganda who are giving birth are the people who are not working, who are still poor. In Malaysia, the people who are giving birth are the people who are working and have got an income. So we have very many young people not working, not active in production, but active in giving birth. So these cannot help us to transform. The discussions that we have should be very succinct, very sober, to look at our morality, have it there, look at our culture, and look at some of these things that were good in the past, good today, and what today looks like itself.
No, it's good you've talked about morality, and I was actually going to ask you if it's a morality issue. Have we simply given up on those values? Do we simply do not, not care at all? And I would also take it back to the elders, the people that we should look up to. I normally say that when it comes to us parents out there, you do not need to tell your son or your daughter that, hey, do this. You simply have to leave. Let your child watch and leave. Do we still have, such existing today?
One is that
even the elders themselves don't give.
There are two things here. One is the elders themselves are much fewer. 78% of Ugandan population is 30 and below. So in other words, the older people above 30 are actually the 22%. Very few people indeed. They are being pushed into the villages for those that are there. Now the younger generation is in the cities, etc. The discussion between the elders and the young people is reducing every day. The discussion between these young parents and their young children is also almost non-existent. Doreen, we work a lot these years. I wasn't there to work those years, but I know that I used to go to have time with my grandparents every holiday. And would have a natural setup altogether, interacting and living together. This has come down. We are looking at people who leave home at 6, come back in the late of the night. Very little time to talk to their young people. If they are to talk, what are they telling their young people? When they grew up, there was no Facebook, there was no WhatsApp. So the issues they even have to talk about with their young people, they don't know. Because, not that they don't want. When I was growing up many years ago, my challenges are very different from when my daughter or son will grow up now. My daughter or son has Facebook, has WhatsApp. I am even learning to adapt to this myself. So the discussions between the young and the old has really reduced greatly, but even the quality of the discussion, the issues to discuss about
are totally different.
I watch you guys here and you have a teens show, And the issues that the teens talk about, there is this Pastor Mark, he's always laboring to explain issues, but you see, he's trying to connect with a team that is almost many miles different from them. And these are the issues that really are affecting our time.
So a case has also been made, James, that people simply do not understand these policies. Earlier you blamed the community, and you're like, okay, yes, we talk about early marriages, but someone somewhere isn't stopping this, much as it is illegal in the country. And it can be argued that maybe they do not know that these policies do exist, or better yet, they simply do not understand them.
So the best policy is perhaps the one that is lived and not talked about. When you have to buy this pen at 500 shillings, it will be real. You don't have 500, you don't have this pen. When we talk about the policies that we are living with, which do not translate to the people that they should, they have a whole moral backing, a whole history of why many years ago this country had so few people. Sometimes I keep asking myself, before 1926, when censuses began, etc., what was the population of Uganda? Where were these Ugandans living? Because the population of Uganda has shot up, I think, from the first census, 4 million upwards now to almost 36 million. Where were the Ugandans then? What were their lived experiences? What was the value of education in their lives? What education did they have? What was the value of money in their lives? How did they earn their money? Many, many things have changed. So when we talk about policies, policies have to be lived. Someone should be seen to relate the policies with the lives of the people. When people are fighting for land today, when people are struggling with money to take care of their families, because you have to buy many things today than you needed to buy 40, 30 years ago, they do not relate this with the fact that they have let down the generation of young people. When a 16, 17-year-old is a mother of 2, 3, what land do they have? What money do they have? What resources at their disposal? What options do they have to actually raise a genuinely, to take care of a family? Very limited resources. So what should government do in terms of policies? Can we demystify these things and relate them to the local people and what affects them? People are fighting for land. They have no idea it is because the number of people has outgrown their land. And the people that are producing are actually not adding value to the land, the young people themselves. Until we translate policies to the lived realities of young people, until we all agree on the problem, because I think we currently agree on the problem, and we agree on the solution as well. The solution has to be by people in the same room, agreeing that the issue is land, agreeing that land is not the issue is population growing, agreeing that population is not the issue is young people who are giving birth very young, and the issue is not that, the issue is young people having sex at a very early age. The issue is why we address the issue of parenting, we address the issue of services, the issue of comprehensive information. Then we are not solving many of the problems that we find ourselves in.
All right. Now, recently during the intergenerational dialogue, as we wind up, James, it was revealed that the Ministry of Education and Sports has actually approved a national sexuality education framework that will be unveiled, I think, next month. Will this you hope so? Well, it was revealed, so we simply have to follow higher to that door. But will this finally answer these many unanswered questions that you just brought up?
It will be a part of the solution. It is not the solution. It is until the framework sees the light of day, people put it into practical steps. We go out there and we are allowed to use the framework. We get the people from the religious faith institutions supporting this framework and putting word to action.
Yeah.
The government putting funding. It's one thing to have a framework. A framework is as good as anything if there is no money to put it into practice. If there are no people to speak and support it, the framework is not an issue itself. But the people, what we believe, what our ambitions are, what our shared solution is actually one that could lead us there. So we really hope that this framework will live to see the light of day. This framework will actually get to be taken out to the people who need it in practical steps. People in the village, this 26-year-old does not need a framework. This 26-year-old currently, in her current status, needs hope to tell her that whereas you are a grandmother at 26, you still have a whole lot of life ahead of you.
But at the end of the day, how do we ensure that it's not abused? Because, when I learned of this approval by the Ministry of Education, I was like, okay, I hope we don't go back to 2016, where comprehensive sexuality education was banned in schools, because someone somewhere was abusing it.
I think everyone should do their job.
The
Ministry of Education has a mandate. it is their obligation to fulfill their mandate. It is not the obligation to come and blame partners who have not done or done without any guidance. It is their obligation to come and see what the partners are doing. It is the obligation to monitor what's happening in the school, to provide this enabling environment, to provide this. Government is government. They have to be on top of this game, so that whoever comes in subscribes to the core values of the government of Uganda. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, James. We could go on and on. Could we have your final remarks and give us a brief on what exactly happened in the intergenerational dialogue and whether or not it did meet your objectives?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. I think that that's precise. The intergenerational dialogue was a very good meeting point of minds, similar minds that have the issues of the young population of this country at their day-to-day living. We had members of parliament that are very passionate about maternal and child health, passionate about reproductive health of young people, who gave very succinct views on what should be done, and we tasked them to actually do it. We had religious leaders who gave their perspective of how this should work, which we agree with and respect so much. And we think that in this kind of approach, if we have agreed on the problem, we should have several dialogues that together agree on the solution. Every person does their part. NGOs like ours will not promote contraceptives if there is no one who needs them. NGOs like ours will not have any bother. We shall have many other things to do if girls are not dying because of unsafe abortion, because the faith leaders have taken care of the morality issues, and we are now talking about mothers who are well received in marriage, needing antenatal services. We are very comfortable with that. It is much cheaper and much more encouraging to deal with that. So we are looking at all that. We are looking at, there was innovations in ICT. What can we do to reach the so-called.com better in a fashion that they understand? So there were various discussions around ICT to reach the young people with the information and services that they need. Looking at the education environment, the school system. How can the school system, for example, protect girls from becoming pregnant when they're in school? How can the school system preserve the dignity and integrity of the girl child at school? Why should an issue such as the pad be such an issue to drive 30% of our girls out of school? We have low-cost, local technologies which the school can adapt, teach the young girls, respect, discuss menstruation as an issue of integrity of the girl child, not as an issue of shame. The school will be a much better place. Girls who get pregnant, when they come back, can we learn that these are normal people who made a mistake, they are not proud of it, take them back, they can be a living example for the other young girls that are going through the school system. So we had discussions around some of these issues, and we believe that moving forward as we move through the year, the respective actors will put their words into actions. The Ministry of Health, which has been heavily around the issue of policy on availing services to young people, young girls especially, and young boys who need them, will have broken through by the end of the year to clear this space on who is eligible, who is not eligible. If who is not eligible, why not eligible? What can we do to make sure that they also get what they need despite not being eligible for certain services? We want to preserve the integrity of this country, but we also want to see ourselves. The comparison between Malaysia and Uganda was the kickoff by National Population Council. In 1960, we are the same. In 2012, we are 100 years apart. So what went wrong? What didn't we do right? The policies we had then were the same policies that they had. They implemented their policies. We keep putting up one, removing it, putting up one, removing it. We just keep rotating around. Technical people have done their work, given right advice to government, and government has an obligation to try and put some of these things that have been tested elsewhere to work, to also use them here. Otherwise, we all love Uganda.
I totally agree. Thank you so much, James. It's been a pleasure. And of course, that's Mr. James Tumsime, the Youth and Gender Coordinator at Reproductive Health Uganda, which was a partner of Reach a Hand Uganda that just concluded intergenerational dialogue that also revealed that actually the Ministry of Education and Sports approved a National Sexuality Education Framework, which is likely to be unveiled next month. And of course, it's an issue of how exactly is it going to impact on the young people. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Doreen Komhanj, and of course, programming does continue on NBS always. Please do enjoy the rest of your day. Good morning.